everybody, it's story time with Mrs. Mamaniak today, okay? And the book that we're going to have a look at is called The Billionaire Boy. Alright, and the author is David Walliams. Now, I don't know if you've heard of David Walliams, but he's a really good children's author. His books are really, really funny. So if you don't have any of his books and you would like to read some, when the library's open, they should have some. If not, I'm sure if you ask your mummies and your daddies to have a look online, you can access his books for free. If you have like a Kindle or you've obviously got iPads and things like that, I'm sure you can access his books for free, especially during lockdown. So maybe have a word with your mummy and your daddy or older siblings to help you have a look online for this, okay? So this is called The Billionaire Boy. Alright, unfortunately today I won't be able to read you the whole book because as you can see it's quite a big book, okay? Has lots of pages in it, lots of chapters in it. I am going to read you chapter 1 and 2. Now, after chapter 1 and 2, what I need you to do is have a look at the comprehension sheet, okay, and it's got some questions on there that I need you to answer after reading and after listening, to the chapters that I read for you. Okay, so you need to really listen carefully because the answers will be within what I will have read today. Okay, so get yourself comfortable, like me, and then we're going to have a read of this story. Okay, so this is called The Billionaire Boy. Meet Joe Spud. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have £1 million? Or £1 billion? How about £1 trillion? Or even a gazillion? Meet Joe Spud. There he is. Can you see him? Joe didn't have to imagine what it would be like to have loads and loads and loads of money. He was only 12, but he was ridiculously, preposterously rich. Joe had everything he could ever want. 100-inch plasma, widescreen, flat screen, high definition TV in every room in the house. 500 pairs of Nike trainers, a Grand Prix racetrack in the back garden, a robot dog from Japan, a golf buggy with the number plate Spud 2 to drive around the grounds of his house, a water slide which went from his bedroom into an outdoor Olympic-sized swimming pool, every computer game in the world, 3D IMAX cinema in the basement, a crocodile, a 24-hour personal masseuse, that's somebody that massages you, underground 10-lane bowling alley, a snooker table, a popcorn dispenser, a skateboard park, another crocodile, £100,000 a week pocket money, a roller coaster in the back garden, a professional recording studio in the attic, personalised football coaching from the England team, and a real-life shark in a tank. In short, Joe was one horribly spoilt kid. He went to a ridiculously posh school. He flew on a private plane whenever he went on holiday. Once, he even had Disney World closed for the day just so that he wouldn't have to queue for any rides. Here's Joe, speeding around on his own private racetrack in his own Formula One racing car. Some very rich children have miniature versions of cars especially built for them. Joe wasn't one of those children. Joe needed his Formula One car made a bit bigger. He was quite fat, you see. Well, you would be, wouldn't you, if you could buy all the chocolate in the world. You will have noticed that Joe on his own in that picture. To tell the truth, speeding around a racetrack isn't that much fun when you are on your own. There he is, speeding around his racetrack. To tell you the truth, speeding around a racetrack isn't that much fun when you are on your own. Even if you do have a squillion pounds, you really need someone to race against. The problem was, Joe didn't have any friends. Not one. Now, driving a Formula One car and unwrapping a king-size Mars bar are two things you shouldn't try and do at the same time. But it had been a few moments since Joe had last eaten, and he was hungry. As he entered the chicane, he tore up the wrapper with his teeth and took a bite of the delicious chocolate-coated nugget and caramel. Unfortunately, Joe only had one hand on the steering wheel, and as the wheels of the car hit the verge, he lost control. The multi-million-pound Formula One car careered off the track, span around and hit a tree. Screech! The tree was unharmed, but the car was a write-off. Joe squeezed himself out of the cockpit. Luckily, Joe wasn't hurt, but he was a little dazed, and he tottered back to the house. "Dad, I crashed the car," said Joe as he entered the palatial living room. Mr. Spud was short and fat, just like his son. Hairier in a lot of places too. Apart from his head, which was bald and shiny, Joe's dad was sitting on a 100-seater crocodile skin sofa and didn't look up from reading the day's copy of The Sun. "Don't worry, Joe," he said. "I'll buy you another one." Joe slumped down on the sofa next to his dad. "Oh, happy birthday, by the way, Joe." Mr. Spud handed over an envelope to his son. Joe opened the envelope eagerly. How much money was he going to receive this year? The card, which read "Happy 12th birthday, son," was quickly discarded in favour of the cheque inside. Joe could barely disguise his disappointment. £1 million? Ugh! He scoffed. "Is that all?" "What's the matter, son?" Mr. Spud put down his newspaper for a moment. "You gave me £1 million last year," whined Joe. "When I turned 11. Surely I should get more now. I'm 12. Mr. Spud reached into the pocket of his shiny grey designer suit and pulled out his chequebook. His suit was horrible and horribly expensive. "I'm so sorry, son," he said. "Let's make it 2 million. Now, it's important you realise that Mr. Spud had not always been this rich. Not so long ago, the Spud family had lived a very humble life. From the age of 16, Mr. Spud worked in a vast loo roll factory on the outskirts of town. Mr. Spud's job at the factory was so boring. He had to roll the paper around the cardboard in a tube, roll after roll, day after day, year after year, decade after decade. This he did over and over again until nearly all his hope had gone. He would stand all day by the conveyor belt with hundreds of other bored workers repeating the same mind-numbing task. Every time the paper was rolled onto one cardboard tube, the whole thing started again. And every loo roll was the same. Because the family was so poor, Mr. Spud used to make birthday and Christmas presents for his son from the loo roll inner tubes. Mr. Spud never had enough money to buy Joe all the latest toys, but would make him something like a loo roll racing car or a loo roll fort complete with dozens of loo roll soldiers. Most of them got broken and ended up in the bin. Joe did manage to save a sad-looking little loo roll space rocket, though he wasn't sure why. The only good thing about working in a factory was that Mr. Spud had lots of time to daydream. One day, he had a daydream that was a revolutionised bottom wiping forever. Why not invent a loo roll that is moist on one side and dry on the other? He thought, as he rolled paper around his thousands roll of the day. Mr. Spud kept his idea top secret and toiled for hours, locked in the bathroom of their little council flat, getting his new double-sided loo roll exactly right. When Mr. Spud finally launched Bump Fresh, it was an instant phenomenon. Mr. Spud sold 1 billion loo rolls around the world every day, and every time a roll was sold, he made 10p. It all added up to an awful lot of money, and this simple maths equation shows. Can you see the maths equation there? 10p times a gazillion rolls times 365 days a year equals a lot of wonga. That's another word for money. Joe Spud was only 8 at the time. Bum Fresh was launched, and his life was turned upside down in a heartbeat. First, Joe's mum and dad split up. It turned out that for many years Joe's mum Carol had been having a torrid affair with Joe's Cub Scout leader Alan. She took a £10 billion divorce settlement. Alan swapped his canoe for a gigantic yacht. Last anyone had heard, Carol and Alan were sailing off the coast of Dubai, pouring vintage champagne on their crunchy nut cornflakes every morning. Joe's dad seemed to get over the split quickly and began going on dates with an endless parade of girls. Soon, father and son moved out of their poky council flat and into an enormous stately home. Mr. Spud named it Bumfresh Towers. The house was so large it was visible from outer space. It took 5 minutes just to motor up the drive. Hundreds of newly planted, hopeful little trees lined the mile-long gravel track. The house had 7 kitchens, 12 sitting rooms, 47 bedrooms, and 89 bathrooms. Even the bathroom had an ensuite bathroom, and some of those ensuite bathrooms had an ensuite bathroom. Despite living there for a few years, Joe had probably only ever explored around a quarter of the main house. In the endless grounds were tennis courts, a boating lake, a helipad, and even a 100-metre ski slope, complete with mountains of fake snow. All the taps, door handles, and even toilet seats were solid gold. The carpets were made from mink fur. He and his dad drank orange squash from priceless antique medieval goblets, and for a while they had a butler called Otis, who was also an orangutan. But he had to be given the sack. "Can I have a proper present as well, Dad?" said Joe, as he put the cheque in his trouser pocket. "I mean, I've got loads of money already." "Tell me what you want, son, and I'll get one, and my assistants will. I'll get one of my assistants to buy it," said Mr. Spud. "Some solid gold sunglasses. I've got a pair. You can't see out of them, but they are very expensive." Joe yawned. "Oh, your own speedboat," ventured Mr. Spud. Joe rolled his eyes. "I've got 2 of those, remember?" "Sorry, son. How about £250,000 worth of W.H. Smith vouchers?" "Boring, boring, boring." Joe stamped his feet in frustration. Here was a boy with high-class problems. Mr. Spud looked forlorn. He wasn't sure there was anything left in the world that he could buy his only child. Then what, son? Joe suddenly had a thought. He pictured himself going around the racetrack, all on his own, racing against himself. "Well, there is something I really want," he said tentatively. "Name it, son," said Mr. Spud. "A friend." Right, we're on chapter 2 now, okay? Chapter 2, Bum Boy. "Bum Boy," said Joe. "Bum Boy?" spluttered Mr. Spud. "What else do they call you at school, son?" "The Bog Roll Kid." Mr. Spud shook his head in disbelief. He had sent his son to the most expensive school in England, St. Cuthbert's School for Boys. The fees were £200,000 a term, and all the boys had to wear Elizabethan ruffs and tights. Here is a picture of Joe in his school uniform. He looks a bit silly, doesn't he? There you go. So the last thing that Mr. Spud expected was that his son would get bullied. Bullying was something that happened to poor people. But the truth was that Joe had been picked on ever since he started at the school. The posh kids hated him. Because his dad had made his money out of loo rolls, they said that was awfully vulgar. "Bottom billionaire, the bum-wiped heir, master plot paper," continued Joe. "And that's just the teachers." Most of the boys at Joe's school were princes, or at least dukes of earls. Their families had made their fortunes from owning lots of land that made them old money. Joe had quickly come to learn that money was only worth having if it was old. New money from selling loo rolls didn't count. The posh boys at St. Cuthbert's had names like Nathaniel Septimus, Ernest Bertram, Lysander Tybalt, Zacharias Edmund, Alexander Humphrey, Percy Quinton, Tristan Augustus, Bartholomew Tarquin, Imogen Sebastian, Theodore Clarence Smith. That was just one boy. The subjects were all ridiculously posh too. This was Joe's school timetable. Monday, Latin, straw hat wearing. Royal Studies, the study of etiquette. Show jumping, ballroom dancing, debating society. This house believes that it is vulgar to do up the bottom button up on your waistcoat. Scone eating, bow tie tying, punting, polo. The sport with horses and sticks, not the mint. On Tuesdays they had ancient Greek, croquet, pheasant shooting, being beastly to servants class, mandolin level 3, history of tweed, nose in the air hour, learning to step over the homeless person as you leave the opera, finding your way out of a maze. Wednesday, fox hunting, flower arranging, conversing about the weather, history of cricket, history of the brogue, playing stately home trumps, reading Harper's Bazaar, ballet appreciation class, top hat polishing, fencing, the one with swords, not selling stolen goods. On Thursday, antique furniture appreciation hour, Range Rover tyre changing class, discussion of whose daddy is the richest, competition to see who is the best friend with Prince Harry, learning to talk posh, rowing club, debating society. This house believes that muffins are best toasted. Chess, the study of coats of arms, a lecture on how to talk loudly in restaurants. And on Friday, poetry reading, medieval English, history of wearing curdery, topiary class, classical sculpture appreciation class, spotting yourself in the party pages of Tartler Hour, duck hunting, billiards, classical music appreciation afternoon, dinner party discussion topic class. Example, how the working class smells. However, the main reason why Joe hated going to St. Cuthbert's wasn't the silly subjects. It was the fact that everyone at the school looked down on him. They thought that someone whose papa made their money from bog rolls was just too frightfully common. I want to go to a different school, Dad, said Joe. No problem. I can afford to send you to the poshest school in the world. I heard about this place in Switzerland. You ski in the morning and then... No, said Joe. How about I go to the local comp? What? Said Mr. Spud. I might make a friend there, said Joe. He'd seen the kids milling around the school gates when he was being chauffeured to St. Cuthbert's. They all looked like they were having such a great time, chatting, playing games, swapping cards. To Joe, it all looked so fabulously normal. Yes, but the local comp, said Mr. Spud, incredulously. Are you sure? Yes, replied Joe defiantly. I could build you a school in the back garden if you like, offered Mr. Spud. No, I want to go to a normal school with normal kids. I want to make a friend, Dad. I don't have a single friend at St. Cuthbert's. But you can't go to a normal school. You are a billionaire boy. All the kids will either bully you or want to be your friend. We want to be friends with you just because you are rich. It'll be a nightmare for you. Well then, I won't tell anyone who I am. I'll just be Joe. And maybe, just maybe, I'll make a friend or even two. Mr. Spud thought for a moment and then relented. If that's what you really want, Joe, then okay, you can go to a normal school. Joe was so excited he bum jumped along the sofa nearer to his dad to give him a cuddle. Don't crease the soup, boy, said Mr. Spud. Sorry, Dad, said Joe, bump jumping back a little. He cleared his throat. I love you, Dad. Yes, son, ditto, said Mr. Spud as he rose to his feet. Well, have a good birthday, mate. Aren't we going to do something together tonight? Said Joe, trying to hide his disappointment. When he was younger, Joe's dad would always take him to the local burger restaurant as a birthday treat. They couldn't afford the burgers, so they would just order the chips and eat them with some ham and pickle sandwiches that Mr. Spud would smuggle in under his hat. I can't, son, sorry. I've got a date with this beautiful girl tonight, said Mr. Spud. Joe looked at the page. There was a photograph of a woman. Her hair was dyed white blonde, and she had so much makeup on it was difficult to tell if she was pretty or not. Underneath the image it read, Sapphire from Bradford. Likes shopping, hates thinking. Don't you think Sapphire's a little young for you, Dad? Asked Joe. It's only a 27-year age gap, replied Mr. Spud in an instant. Joe was convinced. Well, where are you taking this Sapphire? A nightclub. A nightclub? Asked Joe. Yes, said Mr. Spud in an offended tone. I am not too old to go to a nightclub. As he spoke, he opened a box and pulled out what looked like a hamster that had been flattened by a mallet, and he put it on his head. What on earth is that, Dad? What's what, Joe? Replied Mr. Spud with mock innocence, and he adjusted the contraption to cover his bald dome. Can you see that wig there? That's what he was putting on his head. That thing on your head. Oh, it's a toupee, boy. Only 10 grand each. I bought a blonde one, a brown one, a ginger one, and an afro for special occasions. It makes me look 20 years younger, don't you think? Joe didn't like to lie. The toupee didn't make his dad look younger. Instead, it made him look like a man who was trying to balance a dead rodent on his head. Therefore, Joe chose a non-committal. Right, well, have a good night, Joe added, picking up the remote. It looked like it would just be him and the 100-inch TV again. There's some caviar in the fridge for your tea, son, said Mr. Spud as he headed for the door. What's caviar? It's fish eggs, son. Ugh! Joe didn't even like normal eggs much. Eggs laid by a fish sounded really revolting. Yeah, I had some on toast for my breakfast. It's absolutely disgusting, but it's very expensive, so we could start eating it. Can't we just have bangers and mash, or fish and chips, or shepherd's pie, or something, Dad? I used to love shepherd's pie, son. Mr. Spud drooled a little, as if imagining the taste of shepherd's pie. Well then? Mr. Spud shook his head impatiently. No. We are rich, son. We have to eat all this posh stuff now, like proper rich people do. See you later. The door slammed behind him, and moments later Joe heard the deafening roar of his father's lime green Lamborghini speeding off into the night. Joe was disappointed to be on his own again, but he still couldn't suppress a small smile as he turned on the TV. He was going to go to an ordinary school again and be an ordinary boy, and maybe, just maybe, make a friend. The question was, how long could Joe keep the fact that he was a billionaire a secret? Right, I've read you the 2 chapters now. I need you to find the comprehension sheet that should be uploaded with this story, and I want you to have a go at answering the questions, okay? So I want you to read the questions first. Read them really carefully. Ask a parent to help you if there's some things that you don't understand. Okay, then I want you to listen to the story again and find the bits where you might find the answer. But the most important thing is you read the questions first, okay? So read the questions, then you can read the story again, and then write down your answers, okay? Hope you enjoyed that. See you soon. Bye.